Welcome back to Timeline of World History. At the end of the last episode we had reached the year 7600 BC. The PPNB culture had taken over from the PPNA in the Levant, and the earliest evidence of a Stone Age dwelling known as Hoyuk House was found in Northumberland, England. Today we will focus on the second half of the 8th millennium BC. And we'll start doing that with Catal Hoyuk, 7500 to 5700 BC. Catal Hoyuk was a very large Neolithic and Chalcolithic settlement in southern Anatolia, dating from approximately 7500 BC. It was perhaps the largest and most sophisticated Neolithic site yet uncovered. It is considered to be a major turning point in the development of civilization from nomadic life towards permanent communities that eventually developed farming. It also contains the finest examples of Neolithic art and religious symbolism. Discovered in 1958, the site was brought to worldwide attention by British archaeologist James Millart between 1961 and 1965. Excavations revealed this section of Anatolia as a center of advanced culture in the Neolithic period. It rapidly drew international attention due to the large size and dense occupation of the settlement, as well as the spectacular wall paintings and other art uncovered inside houses. Due to involvement in the Dorak affair, Millart was banned from Turkey, and the site was left idle until the 12th of September in 1993, when Ian Hodder of the University of Cambridge undertook the most ambitious excavation project, according to fellow British archaeologist Colin Renfrew. This project is still being carried out today, so there might be news from Catal Hoyuk any day. The population of Catal Hoyuk was estimated to be between 5,000 and 8,000 inhabitants. Houses were so tightly packed together that the only access to the interior was through a hole in the roof, reached by interior and exterior ladders, similar to Asikli Hoyuk covered in the last episode. Each main room served as an area for cooking and daily activities. Raised platforms were built along the walls for sitting, working and sleeping, and additional rooms were used as storage. Burials occurred in pits beneath hearths, platforms and beds within houses. Bodies were bent before being placed in baskets or wrapped in reed mats. Some graves suggest that bodies may have been exposed in the open air for a time before bones were gathered and buried. That should reduce the smell and disease. A practice that would be pretty horrifying today. Other graves were disturbed with the head of an individual removed from the rest of the body to be displayed in ritual, plastered and painted with ochre to recreate human-like faces, a practice similar to those found in Jericho. Interior and exterior surfaces of houses were covered with vivid murals and figurines. These include groups of men in hunting scenes, red images of aurochs and stags, vultures sweeping down on headless people, and quite possibly the world's oldest map. Distinctive clay figurines of women have been found in upper levels of the site, suggesting that these people had a religion that was rich in symbolism. In terms of lifestyle, these people lived egalitarian lives with little social distinction between male and female. Wheat, barley, lentils, peas, bitter vetch, and other legumes were cultivated. Sheep, goats, and the beginning of cattle were domesticated, although hunting continued to be a major source of meat. Pottery and obsidian were major industries for the settlement, with obsidian tools traded for items such as Mediterranean seashells and flint from Syria. The settlement would last until approximately 5700 BC. Let's go to China, as I usually say to Brennan on the podcast. Pengtoushan Culture, 7500 to 6100 BC. Pengtoushan Culture was a Neolithic culture center in the central Yangtze River area of northwestern Hunan, China. Two settlements were discovered at Pengtoushan itself and at the later site of Bashidang. The type site of Pengtoushan was excavated in 1988 in Li County, Hunan, China, by Hunan Provincial Institute of Archaeology and Cultural Relics. Grains, rice husks, and cord-marked pottery pieces were identified among the burial goods as the early stage of cultivated rice. This confirms that the middle Yangtze region was one of the areas where grain was grown at an early stage. The second, later settlement at Bashidang was situated at Wufu village in Lixian County, Hunan, China. Excavations between October and November 1995 by the same institute found a black silt layer at a depth of 4.5 meters containing a large number of organic substances, over 100 kinds of identifiable plants, dozen varieties of animal bones, articles made of wood, bamboo and bone, and over 15,000 grains of rice, the largest discovered at the Neolithic site in China. Bhirrana, 7,500 to 2,600 BC. That's a very, very long period. Bhirrana is a small village located in Fatehabad District, Haryana State in India. According to a report by the Archaeological Survey of India in December 2014, it was the oldest Indus Valley Civilisation site dating back to approximately 7,500 BC, well before the date of Mehrgar, the previous candidate for the forerunner of the Indus Valley Civilization. Excavations have revealed 4 separate culture periods. Period 1A, Hakra wares. Culture was characterized by structures of subterranean dwelling pits cut into the natural soil. Walls and floors of these pits were plastered in yellow alluvium obtained from the Sarasvati Valley. Artifacts comprised a copper bangle, copper arrowhead, terracotta bangles, chameleon lapis lazuli steatite beads, bone points, stone saddles, and querns. Pottery was very rich, with one example, Bishkrom ware, consisting of exterior paintings in black and white pigments. And then we get to period 1B, early Harappan culture, consisted of an open-air settlement with no fortifications. Houses were built of mud bricks of buff color. Artifacts included a shell seal of quarterfoil shape, arrowheads, bangles, copper rings, carnelian, jasper, lapis lazuli, steatite, shell, terracotta beads, pendants, bull figurines, rattles, wheels, gamesmen, terracotta marbles, terracotta and faience bangles, bone objects, sling balls, and sandstone pounders. And then we have period 2A, early mature Harappan culture, was marked by a transformation in the city layout. It was encompassed within a fortification wall. Mud brick structures were aligned with a slight deviation from true north. Pottery showed a mixture of early and mature Harappan forms. Artifacts included semi-precious stone beads, copper shell, terracotta, faience bangles, fish hooks, chisels, copper arrowheads, terracotta figurines, and various miscellaneous artifacts. And then we get to the final period. Period 2B, mature Harappan culture, was the last period of occupation of the site, with all characteristic features of a well-developed Harappan city. A massive fortification wall made of mud bricks was built. Houses were made of mud bricks with wide linear roads separating them. A circular baked earth structure known as a tandoor was also found that is similar to the community kitchens found in rural India today. Artifacts consisted of steatite beads, copper terracotta faience shell bangles, copper celts, bone objects, terracotta spoked wheels, terracotta animal figurines, lapis lazuli, carnelian, agate, faience, steatite, terracotta beads, and stone objects. The main find, though, was a replica of the famous dancing girl of Mohenjo-Daro, engraved on a potsherd in the form of a graffiti. And here she is. This potsherd was discovered by the ASI between 2004 and 2005. Mr. Rao of the ASI called it the only one of its kind because no parallel to the dancing girl in bronze or any other medium was known until the latest find. He also called the engraving a highly stylized figure whose torso resembles that of an hourglass or two triangles meeting at their apex. Up on the horizontal shoulder line, a partly damaged round head was visible. Oblique strokes on the right upper arm are suggestive of the presence of armlets. Lower portion of the body is missing due to damage on the sherd. Clothing is indicated by horizontal hatchings on the chest and abdomen with vertical hatchings on the thighs. These deities or dancing girls may represent water nymphs associated with water rites once widespread in the Indus Valley. There will be more, much more, on the Indus Valley Civilization in episodes to come. Cayonu, 7200 to 6600 BC. Cayonu is a Neolithic settlement situated in Diyarbakir Province of southeastern Turkey, dated to between 7200 and 6600 BC. The first excavation was carried out between 1964 and 1978 by Robert John Braidwood, with second excavation conducted between 1985 and 1991. This settlement covers the pre-Pottery Neolithic A, pre-Pottery Neolithic B, and Pottery Neolithic periods. It consisted of a 200-meter diameter mound containing several occupation levels of over 600 years of human activity. Houses were built of adjoining mud brick walls with entrances through the roof, once again. Sheep and goats were domesticated, and in later years this became possibly the earliest place where the pig was first domesticated. However, like at other sites in Turkey, hunting continued to be practiced with aurochs and red deer on the menu. Additionally, regular cultivation of cereal also started near Cayonu, in which, according to the Max Planck Institute for Plant Breeding Research in Cologne, the wild ancestor of 68 contemporary types of cereal can still be found in close vicinity to the site. Grapes, figs, ryegrass, emmer and einkorn wheat were cultivated during the period of occupation. This was also the site where the earliest known piece of cloth has been found. This piece of textile was a line fabric 9,000 years old that had been woven from locally grown flax. As well as this site is believed to have been the main bead producing center during the early Neolithic, and archaeologists have discovered 4 copper items dated to 7200 BC, including the earliest known hammered copper objects. Okay, this is Ain Ghazal, 7200 to 5000 BC. Ain Ghazal is a Neolithic site located in northwestern Jordan on the outskirts of the capital Amman. It started as a small hamlet of approximately 200 inhabitants during the middle of the pre-Pottery Neolithic B period. It continued to expand and grow richer until it reached a size of 40 acres by 6200 BC. That was 4 to 5 times the size of contemporary Jericho, situated only 30 miles away. Therefore, it ranks as one of the largest prehistoric settlements in the Neolithic Near East. Houses were built of undressed fieldstones that were coated with mud plaster before being finished with lime plaster. Floors were made of a fine layer of lime plaster applied over lime and gravel base. Both walls and floors were painted over with a red pigment. These people buried some of their dead beneath the floors of their houses, others outside in the surrounding terrain. Of those buried inside, the head was retrieved and buried in a separate shallow pit beneath the house floor. In other cases, skulls received special treatment by being modeled with lime plaster to form death masks, which Kathleen Kenyon described as portrait skulls. As mentioned previously, similar finds have been found at Catal Hoyuk and Jericho. Ain Ghazal is renowned for a set of anthropomorphic anthropomorphic statues found buried in pits in the vicinity of special buildings that may have had ritual functions. More than 200 figurines, 2.5 inches in length, made of clay and plaster, represented toys made for pre-pottery Neolithic children. Other figurines represented wild cattle with depressions behind the head, formed by a cord, indicating that calves were captured, halted and reared until they could be ritually slaughtered. Some cattle figures have slash marks impressed in the clay before they were fired that suggested some kind of magic. 2 examples were buried underneath a house floor. More than 30 figurines recovered had peculiar features. None had both head and body. These were probably related to the burials mentioned earlier, with the head regarded as a location of power. By severing the head, power was released to a successor so that the next generation could exercise that power for the household. The most dramatic finds were 2 groups of plaster statues that have been displayed around the world. More than 30 anthropomorphic figures were discovered in 2 batches between 1983 and 1985. First group dates to approximately 6700 BC, with the other group being 200 years later. Figures are made of soft yellow-white calcium carbonate that is plastered over a core of reeds and twine. Traces of pink paint are visible in the faces. Black bitumen and green copper ore appear around the eyes. Earlier figures were replaced with more stylized forms that suggested they may represent ancients or perhaps the sculptor's ancestors. Similar statues have been found at Jericho and Nahal Hemar in Israel. People cultivated barley, ancient species of wheat, peas, beans, lentils, and chickpeas. Goats were domesticated, but like so many places in the early Neolithic, hunting was used to supplement their diet with deer, gazelle, equids, wild pigs, fox, and hare on the shopping list. After 6500 BC, the population began to decrease sharply to 1/6 of the previous population due to environmental degradation. So, we are now approaching 7000 BC and the start of the 7th millennium BC. Join us next time when agriculture spreads to the Balkans from Anatolia. The cow joins the sheep and goat in being domesticated. Pottery spreads to Europe and South Asia, and the first gold and copper ornaments begin to be made. A much more detailed narrative of this episode will be available in the next few weeks on timelineofworldhistory.wordpress.com and thefanofhistory.wordpress.com. Shane, the author of this series, is currently rewriting the earlier episodes for the website and will start next weekend with 70,000 to 30,000 BC. Otherwise, join us next time as we continue our journey through the timeline of world history. And I, your friendly neighborhood voice, I'm the fan of history. And as I said, this is all written by Shane Sowersby. Shout out to Shane for some fantastic work. Thank you all for listening, and see you next time.